Hey everybody, Bandicoot Commando here, and welcome back to Outlaws. In the last one, I went over the whole game again through the campaign and the side mode of historical missions to show where all the secrets in the game are, and some Easter eggs too. And it took me quite a bit, but I went through it all. I'm a little upset that the achievements are slightly bugged because I went through the campaign and martial training, and I found the secrets. So I don't get why the trophies didn't trigger, because it did for a handful of missions. It's just a little unfair for me. I even had the invulnerability on, and I still got some of these achievements with the invincibility option on. Who knows? Maybe they'll fix it, or maybe it's just really finicky. I'll try to trigger them again some other time. But today, we are going to go over the vault. This is filled with a lot of artwork and other stuff that's never seen before. So, starting out, we have the storyboards here for the various cutscenes. So, with the opening scene here, you got the train. You can read the descriptions there too. I can also zoom in so you can get a better look at some of these, but I can't really scroll to the next image right away. Gentlemen, I have seen the future. Where now there are struggling farms, I see a gleaming city rising from the parched plains. A city that has my name on it. Boys, we have ourselves a job to do. There's some as has a problem sharing my vision. They fail to see that selling their land to me will make this county the wealthiest in the state. Well, their time has finally come. You will enlighten them. Go out there and don't come back till I can look at this map and know that every inch of it is mine. Credits go here. That's such a fun thing to do with the storyboard. Why, you ain't heard a word I said. She got a voice on her, almost as pretty as yours, Anna. Shall I write a list for you? Nope. Got it into my head, ain't I? You better had 2 pound of flour, 1 ham, salted, 1 pound of sugar, fruit if they got any, calico, 8 yards, and if there's any cash left, some of that flowery water, rose water. Yeah, water. I think that about covers it. Marshall James Anderson buying perfume. This is history. This is marriage. Bye, Pa. Well, well, the valiant Marshal is still holding out. Now, what is it the bard wrote? Cowards die many times before their deaths, but the valiant taste of death but once. Doctor, what? We're setting to buy their land, to persuade them, to enlighten. Remember? Oh, I always enlighten. And then I kill. My Bonnie lies over the ocean. My Bonnie lies over the sea. My Bonnie lies over the ocean. Bring back my Bonnie to me, to me. Bring back, bring back. Oh, bring back my Bonnie to me, to me. Bring back. There's no image here. Sarah, come away from the window, honey. Yes. Good afternoon, ma'am. Is the marshal in? He ain't a marshal no more, sir. Mr. Anderson, then? Who is it wants to know? We was wondering if your husband has given any more consideration to the offer that we made on this farm a couple of weeks back? You got your answer then, I believe. What is it the Bible says, Slim? I don't know, Doctor. Ah, yes. You don't never, never look a gift horse in the mouth. It's a pearl of wisdom, ignored at your peril. Well, we ain't sellin'. Lady, you would never forgive yourself if you let your husband pass on this unique once in a lifetime opportunity. Let me enlighten you as to the benefits of reconsidering. My husband's not here right now. We know that. Here we are at the shop. Just a quick sec. Just reading a quick Discord message. Must been 10 years since you traded in your Silver Star for a plow, James. It was a sad day for the county when you retired, and that's for sure. A man can get too ambitious. Hell, you kill a few men before a jury gave you permission to, and they fire you. Ain't fair, no sir. You ain't a farmer, James. Your father weren't a farmer, and you ain't either. My father didn't live long enough to find out what he could have been. Well, I reckon that's true, but and every man's entitled to a fair trial, wouldn't you say? Right, but you never shot an innocent man. I never met an innocent man. That'll be $4, Marshal. You got any of that, fancy rose water? Yes, sir. Direct in from Paris, France, sir. Not Paris. I ain't gonna say Paris. And might I add, Miss Anderson has excellent taste. Yeah, and she smells good, too. Stop it. Stop it, please. Run, Sarah. Run. Sobbing. I'm not gonna make any sobbing sounds. Oh, don't cry, woman. Remember, to weep is to make less the depth of grief. Yeah, that's the one. Put me down! Put me down, or you're in trouble, mister. Big trouble. Trouble, eh? Ha! Hear that, doctor? I'm in big trouble. Give my regards to your family, James. Oh, there's two alternates to this. Thanks, I will. Or, alternatively, thank you, I will. Well, yeah, we don't have an image to that. No. No! Anna. Yes. They're taking Sarah. You've got to sell or we'll never see her again. Where did they go? Oh, James, please. Where did they take her? Anna! James, I'm cold. Hold me. I'm holding you. I I love you. Anna! Stop! I'll shoot. I will. Sarah. No, please don't shoot no more. They took her north. Said something about heading to Willington, taking a train to Willington, then heading on to Cortez. Said you'd never find them there. Just don't shoot me. How do I know you're telling the truth? 'Cause I don't want to die. Ow! Damn it! I told that fool doctor stealing your kid weren't gonna be good for anyone's health. It's a shame he didn't listen. Good shooting, mister, but you're already too late. Oops, you missed the train. Sorry. Oh, come on, you little brat. Get your stinking hands off me. Daddy! Sarah! I mean, if you were going to use a black screen, couldn't you just add nothing there? Stop! I'll shoot! I will! Take more than bullets to get what you want, mister. Oh. It's a nice shot of the sawmill, wouldn't you say? Marshall James Anderson. Once a lawman, always a lawman. Boys, did I tell you how much I hate lawmen? Ah! Oh, too bad. I was hoping we could talk. Heh, now that is what I meant by enlightenment. I did not mean burn down the property, kill the wife, and kidnap the child. Oh, well, I guess things just got out of hand. Oops. Out of hand? Now I got a crazed father after me and his little brat out back. Now you got me into this mess. You get me out of it. Well, Mr. Graham, all my medical training says that you can't reason with a crazy man. So, kill him! That is music to my ears. Consider it done. And I'll kill the girl. No, Mary, I don't murder children. Yes, sir, we must love and protect the children. They are our future. That's what the good Lord said. Suffer the little children to come unto me, and forbid them not. For such is the kingdom of God. Damn! Oh, my hat! Damn it! Eh, get me out of here! Hey, you, Marshall! Pull me out of here! Marshall, you hear me? I hear you, Doctor, and I ain't no Marshall. Now, if you know what's good for you, you're gonna tell me exactly what I need to know. Well, I'm a mine of information. A veritable mine. Get it? Where's my little girl? She ain't here. I can see that. Well, praise be to the Lord, the man can see. Now we're talking. I have a proposition. If I tell you where she is, will you let me go? That depends. On what? On if you tell the truth. She's hid away in the cliff dwellings, 10 miles south of Dogsville. That's the gospel truth, I swear on my mother's grave. If she had one. Now pull me up. If you're right, I'll be back. Hey, you can't leave me down here. Pull me up right now. You son of a bitch. What's your wife's name? What is it? I kind of liked her. She smelled sweet, that woman, like a rose. Now, what was it the bard said? What's in a name that which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet? Let me see. Anna! Yes, that's her name. And does Anna smell sweet right now? Oh, yes. Don't leave me down here to die and to go where we know not, to lie in cold obstruction and to rot. Is that what he said? Or was it Doc set you up? You walked right into our trap. Where is she? But you fight like a mountain lion. You know where my daughter is or not? Ugh, getting dry there in my throat. Mm. I was a father too. There we go. Just tell me where she is. I killed for my children, but it made no difference. You're lucky, mister. Your kid's alive. Where? Bob Graham. Big Rock Ranch. Stop! I'll shoot! I will! You afraid of dying, kid? Keep that fear. Hell, I say we use him for target practice. I think the boss is going soft. He should have shot 'em both. I reckon the boss wanting to run for mayor. Don't want any blood on his hands. A man can get too ambitious. Sarah. Oh, Daddy. You afraid of dying? It was you. You shot my father. And now I'm gonna shoot you. Huh, funny. That is all the storyboards there. A soundtrack. General remarks by Clint Bajaka here. In 1995, I was engaged to compose the spaghetti western score for LucasArts' upcoming 3D first person shooter, Outlaws, in which, after marauders murder a retired marshal's wife and kidnap his daughter, he sets out for revenge, killing them one by one. The style was to be an original homage to the great spaghetti western soundtracks of the late Ennio Morricone. I hope I'm saying his name right. Darren Stinnett, the creative director, and I had recently completed work together on Dark Forces, the first 3D FPS produced by LucasArts, for which I produced the original soundtrack and sound effects. Darren had the great leadership style of leveraging the talents and instincts of his leads, creating a production atmosphere of freedom, inspiration, and risk taking. I responded to the challenge by carefully listening to all of Morricone's spaghetti western soundtracks for like 2 weeks, then putting them aside and going it alone from then on. However, this exciting challenge didn't come without an element of terror on my part. Up until then, all my scoring for our video games had been in the form of MIDI files, MIDI. These tiny files ship in the game and sent musical data to whatever audio hardware happened to be on the user's computer. These synthesizers usually sounded pretty bad, certainly by today's production standards. However, for Outlaws, the audio format would be Redbook audio, or CD tracks on the actual game CD-ROMs, the kind of audio tracks you'd find on a commercial music CD. Hence, I was really being asked to produce a record, old school style, what ended up being 15 standalone tracks queued in a kind of simple playlist during gameplay. One of the smartest things I've done in my career was to question how in the world could I create a successful spaghetti western score and MIDI? It would absolutely fail. I realized I needed help with live production and lots of musical instruments. In charting a plan, I identified I identified the need to bring in a friend, Hans Christian, an amazing composer, musician, producer, and engineer. Working with him would ensure a great production process and sound quality for the soundtrack. Spaghetti Western music usually employs an an eclectic collection of instruments, often ones typically not heard together. For example, orchestra orchestral textures may accompany guitar, banjo, harmonicas, or jaw harp, and the list goes on and on. LucasArts hadn't yet developed into a big music budget company, so one challenge was how do we get all of these instruments recorded within budget? One answer was doing the playing, singing, and whistling ourselves as much as possible, and pleading with management for a live production budget. I played acoustic and electric guitars, hand drums, piano, often plucked, strummed, or struck on strings with mallets, alto recorder, melodica, singing, and male choir with colleagues Michael Land and Peter McConnell, and whistling, a spaghetti western staple. Beyond this, we hired a string quartet, female singer, flamenco dancer, multi wind instrumentalist, flute, trumpet, French horn, a harmonica player, a percussion trio, including timpani, a virtuoso guitarist for parts too difficult for me. Hans played cello, and Peter violin. With this motley collection of instruments, we set off producing track after track in the studio, using MIDI only for grander orchestral support. Most all of the score is live recording, making possible the achievement of something real, something truly spaghetti. It was without a doubt the most fun I ever had on a project with humor, spontaneity, and camaraderie in high force. A word on the score itself. The main element was theme and melody. There are several leading themes, but they are not disparate. In most cases, they are interrelated in a way that strengthens the cohesiveness of the soundtrack. Throughout the tracks, there is a sense of recall, themes or melodic fragments referencing prior instances in the score. I've never seen this remarked upon, but there is an underlying hymn that could be considered a kind of hidden core at the foundation of the score. Jerusalem, considered by many to be the unofficial anthem of England, is thematically and emotionally at the center of the thematic world of Outlaws. While not referencing England itself, the spirit of this hymn provides a kind of bold, anthemic heroism in the marshal's drive for justice. I didn't even consciously realize my own referencing of this hymn, nor set out to base things on it. Rather, I realized about halfway through production that the hymn lurked out in the shadows of the score. Notably, I had sung it many times in chapel with my high school schoolmates. Bring me my bow, and later, Chariot of Fire. There is only one literal statement of this hymn whistled by the marshal himself in the cemetery cinematic against a desolate wind background. Perhaps the closest reference to it in the score is the orchestral tutti and Anna's theme. Just about every principal theme in the score dances around the melodic structure of the main title theme in order to relate to one another, ultimately to invoke Marshal James Anderson's strength and courage. The main title. I'll play it while I read. Having recovered from the crunch to release The Dig, for which I did sound design, and tapped for the upcoming Western Outlaws soundtrack, I was caught off guard when marketing informed us that the Outlaws trailer would be produced the next day. And if I had any themes, I'd better button them up and get them to the marketing team in a hurry. I practically ran into the studio with an acoustic guitar, paced back and forth strumming and whistling, and the main title theme just popped out, almost in real time. The melodic moves and harmonic progressions would define the central language of the score, from which almost every theme variant would be derived. I never really considered this the main theme of the game, but it is one of the more recurring ones you will hear. Oh, okay. Well, I need a moment. I'll be right back. I need to get a drink. Sanctuary. Sanctuary features yet another theme that is derived from the main theme. I laid down strumming on guitar, and guitar master Danny Yuzaveski came in to play the slide melody. Like a number of tracks, there is the use of sound effects, either for a musical effect, like the opening wolf howl, or for dramatic effect to set a mood. The whistling enters with a background of only desert wind, its guitar accompaniment only gradually emerging later. This theme closely recalls the opening theme of the track, so we have thematic deviations of deviations. The only way I can make sense of all these variant themes is to attribute all of them to the initial main title theme, like branches on a tree. The Shack. This is one of the 5 pieces that were meticulously annotated in a written score in a kind of 1960s academic style with atonal and electoric elements. It is the first instance in the soundtrack of the male group Grunt, originally pioneered in Morricone's masterful soundtracks. The piano was largely played with mallets, and in fact, I clearly recall using kitchen utensils like a spaghetti serving fork and wooden spoons. Somewhere I have these scores, all handwritten like conservatory compositions. I should dig them up. I don't know if Clint has a Twitter or not, but if he does, hopefully he might have found those notes of the scores and he could share them. Anna's theme. Probably my favorite track, as it introduces a new sweet melody about the marshal's wife, Anna. She dies in his arms to this music, as does the menacing antagonist fall dead to the floor in the end, shot by Anderson's rescued daughter, saving her father's life. The orchestral tutti thematic statement at the end heralds the vanquishing of an evil villain and reunion of father and daughter. Darren Stennett was visionary to afford the lingering shot time to allow this musical statement to unfold as the two hug each other. This track is also boasts a large variety of instrumentation, including string quartet, English horn solo, female vocalists, classical guitar accompaniment, flute, trumpet, French horn, and MIDI orchestra backing. The tender melody on the flute eventually underscores Anderson handing his daughter her doll as they ride off into the sunset. I was gratified to hear a tester remark that this was his favorite track, especially intriguing as some of the testers, understandably given so many testing hours, would launch a level off of the CD-ROM, then pop in their favorite Metallica or Iron Maiden CD to accompany gameplay. It's probably the most emotive track, if not necessarily the most spaghetti. Revenge. Like The Shack, this track was completely notated as in a classical concert score. It features some tremolo su ponticello, rapid bowing near the bridge, on cello by Hans, and more percussive playing on the piano strings. It also presents a use of the guitar as a percussive, ugly instrument, where the percussive twang and vibration is more important than the normal sound of a guitar. It also features the percussion trio prominently who played wonderfully over a 3-day period. One hilarious memory is that we couldn't fit the largest tympanum through the recording room door, so the timpani had to be out in the sound department sitting area, ultimately opening up to the entire company open floor plan. For 3 days, the entire company heard timpani raging through the space. I was told that everyone loved it. Larry, the O, tackled the snare drum in this, as he did all snare drum parts. The percussion grove towards the end is meant to depict an imagined recent civil war, something never mentioned in the game, but open to creative license in a composer imagined backstory of the music. Well, Clint, the Civil War does play a small role in the game's backstory. The train. The speeding train combat level needed a dedicated track, so this faster moving rhythmic track was designed. It's built on a repetitive acoustic guitar motor, or ostinato. One of the leading parts is the harmonica wailing blues patterns over the chugging of the musical train. Different sounds and colors are mashed in together, such as whistling, snare drum riffing, male grunts, guitar motors, electric guitar with tremolo, and whammy bar. It's kind of the supercharged song in the soundtrack, and the development team chose this track for the opening credits sequence. They happily informed me that they timed my screen credit with the tremolo guitar chord, making the text vibrate in time. I do consider the train theme to be probably one of the more, like, the actual main theme of the game, to be honest, but it is what it is. Get more drink in me. Sanchez the Outlaw. There are a couple of stories behind this track. First, Mark Crowley, a level designer on the Outlaws team, approached me and said he had an idea for a tune for Sanchez. Mark played guitar, and he demonstrated the tune, which was in a Spanish flamenco style. We immediately agreed that it would be a great fit for Sanchez. The guitar part being too much for me to get right, we brought in Danny to play the Spanish guitar part, which he concluded with a virtuosistic expository solo, akin to a cadenza. I really enjoyed playing the B section melody on the Medelica, and Nick Phelps' fantastic mariachi trumpet overdubs helped push the track into full Sanchez mode. The other remarkable thing about this was an innovative idea from Hans. He knew a flamenco dancer and envisioned her dancing to the closing section with Danny's solo, making for a kind of raucous tavern-like ripper. Hans built a small wooden platform for her to dance on, and she tore it up with her steel-soled flamenco shoes. I mean, when you listen to it, you can kind of hear her dancing. You can really hear her dancing to the rhythm of it. Good old styled Spanish music. The Ballad of Dr. Death. This ballad starts off with a sound effect of a match lighting. I lit like 15 kitchen matches at once for the sound. Then a fuse and explosion. This seemed to me to set the tone for this grisly character. Of course, it's not a ballad at all. One of the many puns, musical and otherwise, throughout this soundtrack. The tone and feel of the track was meant to depict the evil and maniacal qualities of Dr. Death in a comical light. The muted electric guitar set an ostinato in motion, with me giving a cowboy giddy-up yell to bring us into the A section with melody on tremolo guitar. The B section literally makes no sense, and in fact, it really couldn't make any less sense, it seems. A kind of Elizabethan recorder tooting a plain little melody with harpsichord. After a repeat of the A section, this Renaissance tune morphs into a verbatim quote from the first movement of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. I tracked up the actual score in MIDI, pushing the inane even further. While the Beethoven was in C minor and the track in B minor, there was no compunction to just abruptly return to B minor, a half step away. A weird move normally taboo in all music. Peter McConnell rocked out a wah-wah electric violin solo followed by a lengthy drum solo by Larry the O. A false ending features us composers singing an absurd cowboy yippee-yi-yay chorus, with the final ending section being an image of monks marching to a somber drum beat and church bell, slamming themselves over the head every couple of steps with a book or plank. An idea shamelessly stolen from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I was surprised to learn that this track was aired fairly regularly on Australian public radio for a time. And that surprises me. The fact that video game music was even on public radio. The Hideout. Hideout is another a noted score on paper with atonal and electoral elements. It features a good deal of plucking and strumming piano strings. It is meant to invoke an eerie, frightening mood, as though one were exploring a dark and dangerous environment. The percussion trio added a ton of depth and character, with timpani body taps and glissonati bongos and cymbal splashes standing out. If I remember correctly, I felt the need to have more spectacle tracks, looser in time and more airy, compared to the more common, the more rhythmic, thematic songs in the score. As noted above, the study of Morricone's spaghetti western soundtracks reveals an occasional use of a more academic concert music, abstract writing to invoke mystery, suspense, and danger. The abstract writing, written tracks in Outlaws are meant as a homage in this regard, and to help stretch out the score into more expansive spaces for a broader gameplay and experience. The Sawmill. One story behind Sawmill is that I got into work, sat down at my workstation, and just started banging this piece out. I hadn't thought of it before, just cranked the ideas as they arose into the sequencer, almost in real time. I even set up a mic and laid in some acoustic guitar, pewter fans whirling in the background, and all. For this, I received a friendly scolding from Hans. As on any project, you hit a stride, and you get to a point where you're basically unstoppable. Things become almost easy or effortless. A colleague of mine once remarked on a different project in the push to the final deadline. Don't worry, we'll figure out how to do all this stuff by the end. This is a universal truth in almost any innovative project where you're traversing new ground. The main theme follows a Morricone-like strumming guitar intro with chimes. The melody played on our old friend the tremolo electric guitar, while male choir, Michael, Peter, and I, appears throughout the score in select spots. The choir in this section is possibly the most dramatic, complete with French horn counter melody. The closing section features a contracted, faster version of the closing theme of the main title on a distorted electric guitar. This thematic treatment actually ends the entire soundtrack at the end of Showdown, affirming itself as kind of the deepest main idea of the score, a feeling of grit, sacrifice, and courage. The Mine. Perhaps the most abstract of the noted tracks, The Mine features some more percussion trio, open piano, and other abstract sounds and gestures. It seemed important to make sure some tracks were open and airy sounding, rhythmic, and unmetered. In fact, I don't believe this track had a tempo. The musical events were simply arrayed on a timeline. In this way, I believe the sensation of a pulse is something introduced naturally by the players in performance with each other. And Improsavari cello makes an occasional appearance as well, by helping the track be a little more strange and scary. By annotating every detail in the score, it enabled us to concentrate on performance, as well as to spontaneously add new ideas in the session. Two Feathers. I believe I played the hand drum on this track, as well as the alto recorder. Naturally, the theme is a derivation of other themes in the score that in turn were derivations of the main title theme. And also naturally, there emerges about halfway through a return to the gritty spaghetti western feel with distorted guitars, over strumming and drumming, carrying a tune found in other tracks, notably the closing sections of Anna's theme. The whistling over guitar that follows presents a different thematic derivation. If all themes that were musically interrelated were considered to share one theme world, as I believe they do, then there really are only a few different themes in the soundtrack. This variety through derivation, I think, helped achieve a kind of cohesiveness and unity in a soundtrack that otherwise comes across as fragmented, and exploratory. The wild card. Before I do, I need a drink. This track features a good deal of slide guitar improvisation in studio by Danny on slide guitar, as well as percussion trio. As mentioned above for other pieces, the goal was kind of open ended, sprawling, abstract space for the players to simply concentrate on gameplay and have a break from the more thematic, attention grabbing tracks. The last gunfight. When the texture became more rhythmic with the electric guitar melody, the trumpet riffs, triple and quadruple tonguing were conceived in the recording session and quickly scribbled down for Nick to play. Not surprisingly, this idea is one of the more striking in the track, spontaneously being one of the guiding forces in the entire production process. The track ends with a question mark, simply stopping in the middle of a phrase. Hans laid down some beautiful cello melodies, and Michael, Peter, and I sure have enjoyed the rhythmic, vesical grunting. And finally, Showdown. Similarly to the previous track ending abruptly, this track begins seemingly in the middle of a phrase. The opening trumpet section invokes the long drawn out dramatic shots of, Sergio Leone, such as the opening of Once Upon a Time in the West. The intent in this track was to accumulate, bring the story to a head, depict the life death struggle of the marshal against almost insurmountable evil and power, alone. Heroic, courageous, and likely about to die. This was meant to raise the flag. It was showtime. The more Spanish and Western themes in the beginning seemed almost an intro to the second section featuring loud, distorted guitar and orchestra. We've heard this theme before in the main title, Anna's theme, and other tracks, but it sneaks in an E minor chord at the end of the first phrase that we haven't heard before. I liken this to Beethoven's alteration of the Eroica theme toward the end of the first movement, a move that signals evolution and arrival. Fittingly, the same guitar riffs that end Anna's theme are combined with a counter melody in the French horns of the main title theme to bring the musical story to a dramatic close. It may be the first time we hear such a literal quotation of the main title theme since the very first track where it was introduced. The keys to the city theme underpinning the entire score. And there you have it. Good words from Clint there. Tools of the trade. Look at the various tools that they used in making the game. AutoCAD Release 13. As with Star Wars Dark Forces, LucasArts continued to use AutoCAD for creation of Jedi, the engine shared by Outlaws and Dark Forces. Between the release of Dark Forces and Outlaws, the team had moved from a DOS version of AutoCAD, first released in '92, to running the Windows 3.1 version on Windows 95, first released in '94. So you could see here when they were working on it. Doesn't give you an exact date though. LucasArts used the same framework built over the course of Dark Forces' development, updated to work with the new formats demanded by AutoCAD R13, and also to take advantage of improvements to the map format afforded to Outlaws. This included things like custom menus and bespoke functionality to easily create sectors and test levels. Boy, man, just seeing that old format, that is 20 so years ago, seeing that sort of thing back then. Various objects were capable of being placed in the map and had appropriate objects to allow for easy identification. Bad guy. 1, 2, and 3. 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8, and 9. Horse 1, 2, and 3. Cow. Chicken. Tarantula. Ewok. Oh, dark forces, so Ewok. Man. Woman. Big woman. Townsfolk. Bob Graham, Slim Fulton, Dynamite Dick, Dr. Death, Blood Eye Tim, Spittin' Sanchez, Henry Bowers, Chief Two Feathers, Rattlesnake Farmer, Buckshot Morgan, Cherokee Dan Moss. That must have been the original name for Two Feathers. Or originally, it was a different outlaw who was Native American and a Cherokee, but went by the more American name Dan Moss. Bloody Mary and Russell Sims. Then off to the side, you got barrels, baskets, spittoons, tables, and other things there. Here's more of them: pistol, rifle, shotgun, TNT, lamp oil, Gatling gun, knife, pistol, rifle, scope, shotgun, sawed off shotgun, double barrel, dynamite, canteen, doctor's bag, extra life, elixir. I guess lives were considered for the game at first. The camera could be freely manipulated in AutoCAD and also introduced various projection presets. An orthographic projection can be seen here, with two layers seen within the window. Mm-hmm. Critical aspect of level creation in AutoCAD was making appropriate use of layers. These are visible here in the four differently colored sections: green, blue, cyan, and magenta, as seen here. Says underground. Well, the magenta, I guess, stands for underground. Can't really read any of that text there. Still no date for when they worked on this. These layers could be toggled off to provide a clearer view of specific areas. Underground, so, and based on that it says minor, I would assume that this is when they were working on the mine level. See, you can turn it on and off so that you can have a good view at these things. All right, that's it for that. Lightwave. Lightwave 3D 5.5 and 5.5. Lightwave 3D were used for modeling objects and of Outlaws, as well as in the creation of cutscenes. Lightwave Modeler, part of the Lightwave 3D package, is what was used for creation and texturing of objects. Lightwave 3D, in conjunction with the Puppet Master plugin, was used for rigging and animation of the objects. So here we have an idea of them making a model. This is meant to be Billy Bear because I can tell with the beard and the blunderbuss weapon there. Same thing from before. Same thing. Same thing still. This is a different character though. Same thing, different character. Still same thing, different character, possibly. And here we are. We have what is meant to be either Dr. Death or spooky Patrick Crow in a full 3D model. G-Wax. G-Wax is one of the many bespoke DOS tools LucasArts used for Outlaws. It's a minimal editor of a paletted multi-frame images, but also has the far more important responsibility of being used to provide behaviors of sprites, such as player weapons and world objects. Seen here is the default graphical view. This application is the evolution of Wax, a tool used in Dark Forces creation. So yeah, you just get to see how sprites were worked out. Bottom bar in the default graphical view allows for moving through all the frames in a GWAX file. In addition, frames can be stepped through via keyboard, and the whole sequence of frames can be played in order. Therefore, if you need to, you can skip frames if needed, though. Seen on the right here is the directions view. The leftmost column is the index. Second from left is an instruction carried out on the frame or frame to show. Then the two right columns can be checked to mirror the sprite horizontally and or vertically. At the top of the bar is the tag to help identify the given directions. Mm-hmm. Scroll bar at the bottom of the directions view can be used to step through the various behaviors that can be specified. Bottom text boxes at the bottom of the directions view can be used to specify additional arguments for a given command. In this case, the command MSG is being sent with this argument of 1. GWAX suite of features is suited to handle all sprites in the game, which includes all the enemies and playable characters. Directions are for enemy sprites, as the name suggests. In this case, the direction bow pick is used for facing to the left, where bopa was used for facing straight ahead. Convention is that facing straight forward is A, where the letters increase as a sprite rotates clockwise. Horizontal mirroring can be enabled at the top right here, with an X checked in a box indicating that it should be enabled. Mirroring is used frequently for sprites with rotation. This is the choreography's view. Each row represents a distinct sequence, each of which is composed of multiple frames. So you could see the sequence of frames of when Anderson fires his pistol, either when he's firing a single shot, or when he is taking, or when he is doing the alt fire with it, and when he is reloading. Same stuff here. Far right columns correspond to the rotation for a given sprite. Original waxes and G waxes can have up to 32 rotations. each row referring to a different sequence. So, you can see Bob crouched and being viewed from different rotations here. Here, we have his animations of when he's firing or about to fire with his pistol. That's it. VPaint. VPaint is the primary graphical editor that LucasArts used for animation file touch-ups. The overall interface and functionality is very similar to Deluxe Paint, a popular commercially available tool used in prior LucasArts titles. It presents a wide variety of functionality. The File menu provides relatively simple options, most pertaining to creating, loading, or saving files. Man, to think how far, and because it said commercially available, to think how far this has come that now there are things like that that are commercially available for anyone to use. Just good luck trying to figure it out. As with Deluxe Paint, a large amount of workflow in VPaint revolves around the concept of brushes. Brushes are loaded from files or created from rectangular samples of a given image. Anime brushes are brushes with multiple frames, which can be easily stepped through. The most practical application of these would be font brushes, where you could step through the Anna brush to select different letters. Paint supports a variety of drawing modes, ranging from simple pixel drawing to blending pixels under the brush in the direction it's moved in, doing transparency or smoothing out pixels. Primary format supported by VPaint is the Autodesk Animator Flick file, an 8-bit paletted 256 color animation format. Consequently, VPaint supports a variety of animation related operations. Distinguishing feature of VPaint over Deluxe Paint is a relatively traditional layer management. This allows for loading multiple animation files to separate layers and saving separate layers to individual animations. At load time, an artist can select between if the animation is to be loaded, either as layers or as a frame. The layer count is displayed as the top right, as well as a visualization of where in the layer stack is currently selected. Higher number layers are drawn on top of lower numbered ones, like this for instance. An option in the layer menu, or pressing tab on the keyboard, allows for toggling visibility of all but the current layer. So there goes the frying pan, leaving nothing but the skull. The standard view of a loaded file in VPaint, currently showing the first frame, just a cow. The magnifying glass tool allows for a closer view of the graphic currently in the editor, with a small preview shown to the left. This will allow you to get closer if you need to make any changes or touch-ups. Like so. VPaint has a solid set of core drawing functionality, both with individual colors and also brushes. Seen here is the outcome of a variety of tools. Text and basic patterns of color are drawn. In blue, in addition to fill on the cow's pattern with orange. Using a brush of part of the cow's leg and hoof, various shape-based tools are demonstrated. Straight lines, curves, circles, rectangles, and arbitrary polygons. A scaled version of this brush can be seen below the cow, like so. Outlaws Remaster. The the AND tool view is accessible via the main file menu and exposes a variety of useful functionality. I believe this is for animations. The Special Extras menu provides a variety of more niche operations, which may not be used particularly frequently. Oh, that's it. Smush. Smush is a tool for DOS used for the creation of Insane, interactive streaming animation engine, movie files. Insane was first used in Star Wars Rebel Assault, finding use in a variety of LucasArts titles and gaining enhancements along the way. The view lets you view the currently selected item, where its corresponding file is located, what type of object it is, which frames it is active for, and a custom user ID. Seen selected here is a NUT file, which is a compressed animation file. In the case of Outlaws, the animation files are stored as Autodesk Animator flick files prior to compression. Animation objects can be edited in a variety of ways. A text resource is being edited here. Text resources in the original Outlaws were used to provide information necessary to render subtitles. The subtitle is present from frames 83 to 89, and the user ID, 11000 in this case, is used to reference strings located in the executable, which are swapped out between different regions of the game. A nut is selected here. Left of the palette uh, button, the text 10 frame X form is shown, meaning that when the black nut animation object starts playing, the 256 color palette will be transformed at runtime to that of the nut, in this case being an all black one. This is used for practically all fades to black in the original Outlaws. Another example of palette transforms would be this chain of 25 frame palette transformations. These are used in the final cutscene of the game to perform the transition from day to night. Smush 2 is an updated version of Smush created for Outlaws. While it remains as a DOS application, it cannot run in DOS 6.2, instead working best if run via Windows 95. November 27th, 19, it gets cut off there. I'm going to assume 96. Well, very similar to Smush. Smush 2 does include some refinements over its predecessor. On the top left of animation objects is a small indicator of the type of palette operation an animation object will do. All gray being ignoring palette, gray and green being to load palette, etc. In addition, the UI has been refined to add a little more visual flair. Outlaw's original cutscenes were created using NUT, blocky compression. While creating a NUT, Smush 2 will display the currently processed frame, alongside a variety of details on the compression process. So, yes, this is the scene where Anderson breaks into the room where Bob and Sarah are, and you can see all the little details up there. This is the door about to be open, and there he is opening the door. You can read all the little, yeah, notes up there and how it changes with frames and palette and all that sort of stuff. That's it. Palettes and color maps. Oh, Outlaw's original assets were all 8-bit palette graphics, meaning that instead of each pixel storing a color by value, each pixel would reference a color in the table of 256 colors, where 0 is transparent. By being made for Windows rather than DOS, Outlaws was able to cast off the yoke of VGA, which only allowed each palette entry to be one of roughly 2,050 colors. Uh, 250,000. Being on Windows, by comparison, allowed for palette entries to be any of roughly 1,700,000 colors. So, the colors that would be used for the hideout. Palette index layout for Outlaws matches Dark Forces relatively closely, having a core set of colors that are expected to be similar between stages, a range of stage-specific colors, and a small amount of colors with no depth queue, meaning that they are always drawn at full brightness. The Sims level, referred to in the final game as the Fort, is an average example of a level's palette, opting not to tint all the colors and simply using the per level palette entries for an additional range fading from brown to gray. 1996. Sims at Night, however, swaps out this range for a more suitable set of colors for a nighttime level, dark blue gray. Within a level, palettes are able to be swapped out at a runtime. The most typical example of this would be entering underwater areas. Some levels specify their own custom underwater palette. Slim's Hideout uses a green tinted palette for the underwater section accessible from the outhouse. The Cliffs use a more muddy brown tint on its water. Oh, this was in 97, so they were on release year. They had to really hustle to finish. And this is the dwellings with the brown water. Color maps are the other component to the core look of Outlaws using the original assets. A color map is a table of 256 by 32 palette indices, the x coordinate correlating to the source color at the given position of the screen, and the y coordinate being calculated by using the color at the location being rendered to, the light level of the area that location is in, and how far away that location is. Outlaws elegantly builds upon the palette and color map system introduced in Dark Forces, whereas Dark Forces relied on separate files for palettes and color map. Outlaws is able to fold both into a single file. It does this by taking advantage aspects of the PCX picture exchange format. The PCX format can, itself, store a palette in its header. So Outlaws reads the palette from the header of the file and then uses the actual pixels of the image to form the color map. These PCX files are generated by a tool that LucasArts developed, CRC Map EXE. Final format for a palette color map PCX file for Outlaws is seen here. In addition to the standard set of shades seen at the top, these color maps contain three additional ranges: one tinted red, one tinted blue, and one tinted yellow. These are used, when using the original assets, to assign the tints to the player sprites based on what multiplayer team they're on. So, red team, blue team, and yellow team. Volver renders. Same description. Renders of the standard revolver model. These graphics are all without hands, as hands were drawn over the top of the graphics after the fact. So you get to see the sprite animation of how the revolver fires and when it's being reloaded, with and without bullets. Rifle renders. Same deal with the rifle. James's revolver frames. Yeah, all the descriptions the same. Seen here are the various frames for James Anderson's variant of the revolver. While all handguns in the game share some similarities, James's are unique in that there are frames for spinning the revolver, as well as James being the only left-handed playable character. An additional notable facet of the pistol is that they all have an unused frame of the weapon being done reloading, all bullets visible in the chamber. Unfortunately, though, this frame animation of him bringing out his revolver isn't really used in the game at all. It would be neat to see him twirl his revolver, but it's just never actually seen in the game, unless it's a multiplayer detail. And when he's alt firing. The various textures that would be applied to the model of Rattlesnake Dick Farmer in Lightwave 3D. So yeah, this is his texture pack for his model. User interface. The development of the various aspects of the original Outlaws user interface, ranging from menus to the HUDs, the heads-up display. The cash register HUD concept. A couple registers with various stats. This establishes the overall theme used by the HUD, with the aesthetic of a cash register and tabs behind them. This would be refined to be quicker to get information at a glance and take up less space. So yeah, this is what it looked like starting out. There's different designs for how it would have looked. A singular long register with 4 different stat displays. The aesthetic is closer to the final here, with appropriate decorations running the bottom length of the register, although the stats differ from those in the final game. So yeah, this is kind of similar to how it would look, just different though. An unadored frame of a cash register. This frame would be horizontally mirrored, then serving as a suitable template on which the in-game HUD graphics were initially built. Just mirrored though. That's it. Following on from the concept art, this artwork is used as the basis for the first HUD model. While not stored in its own file, this graphic was on its own hidden layer on the Photoshop file for the first HUD model. The first HUD model, with singular tabs currently positioned to mock up the rough appearance of what it could presently look like in game. This iteration of assets sees a new, thinner look for the numeric tabs, as well as the addition of the heart and skull tabs. This is basically what would be used in the final game. Seen here is a wide variety of elements, both used and unused. Cards are now present, though no weapon cards would see any use in the final. The 2-digit tabs and weapon tabs, including dynamite timer tabs, also would not be used in the final. Knife, shotgun, revolver, dynamite, rifle. The fact that there was a tab for a timer for dynamite would have been pretty handy. These elements are put to use in this HUD template, giving a clear example of how the unused assets would have ended up used with a different HUD than seen in the final. The new HUD, as it is called, is seen here, though this would not be the final exact layout of the elements on the HUD. This is the effectively final look of the HUD, leaving only the bottom bar as a static element, and replacing energy with a thermometer. Final iteration of the HUD, as it is seen in the original Outlaws. Ammo has one graphic per loaded round in the current weapon. Reserve has 1 to 2 tabs to display the amount of ammo. Items are represented by unique tabs, and health is represented with a series of tabs. Graphic archiving a wide variety of tabs and cards used and unused in Outlaws. So let's see here. We have our keys, medical bag, the various stone tablets, the crowbar, the shovel, the card symbols for shotgun ammo, rifle ammo, and revolver ammo, which aren't exactly used. Then we have the oil symbol, the ink and pen, a lantern, which goes unused, the gear, the round stone key, da, 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 weapons, knives, shotgun, revolver, dynamite, rifle, another shotgun, probably for double barrel and sawed off and single barrel, flags for capture the flag, the cannon symbol, and a piece of parchment. What this was for, I would not know. And there's different shadows and lighting on it, probably for effect of when, depending on where you're at with the lighting. Empty cards probably was used as like a placeholder for when new things would be added on here. Again, not sure what this scroll thing is for. The cannon might have been used for something else as well. The menus. Outlaw's original release had a large number of menus with relatively Spartan functionality. The key exception to this would be the multiplayer character selection screen, where it would play a small movie of the hovered over character. Yeah, but it says beta, so this was a beta build of the menu. But yeah, this is what the original game's menu was like. When you save your game, when you're selecting a difficulty, keep in mind it did not have good, bad, or ugly. The multiplayer menu, when you are starting and trying to find a map and which game mode you wanted to play, the different options you would put in: the lobby, selecting your character, still in the lobby once you have your character, different options in the options menu. Here's your options, same as before. Volume control. This was more advanced options, and this is if you wanted to change the controls to your change your controls. Yep, this is if you wanted to change the controls to your keyboard and map different buttons and such. The menu watercolors. Though only small snippets are visible from the menus, the menus use a variety of watercolor versions of stills from the cutscenes, as well as one angle that is otherwise unused. I believe this is the one that goes unused. The main menu concept. Contrast with the final version of Outlaw's main menu, this early concept provides a significant change in style, albeit with a clear lineage that leads to what would end up in the retail release. Notably different is that the bounty hunt option, which would evolve into martial training in the final game. These graphics include frames for a flaming animation effect for the currently selected menu entry. Okay. Yep. When you select a option, it would be flame. It's kind of like when you're putting a brand on a cow. The loading menu. Okay. As Outlaws menus goes, the journey from initial concept to final iteration is a fairly linear one. From conception to finalization, the core concept and layout remained the same. There you have it. An alternate multiplayer start menu. Seen here is the series of gradually improving example layouts for the menu for starting a multiplayer game. While this menu would turn up in the final game, it would take a much different form. Yeah, though that's probably more of a placeholder, if anything. There you go, that's better. And there you have it. Multiplayer join. As with multiplayer start menu, the join menu presented here is a far cry from the final iteration. Not that big of a far cry. The configuration menu. Mockups for for a prospective configuration menu for the player's name and character seen and used in multiplayer. Ultimately, this menu would end up being scrapped, the player name and character selection moving onto other menus. These graphics all present in-progress variations of a variety of menus. Notably different are the multiplayer and configuration menus, which are closer in layout to the simpler main and difficulty menus. Outlaws multiplayer character select screen closely resembles the one found in the remaster. Unlike the rest of the video files from the original, though, these cutscenes were swapped out with new renders created from scratch. The original videos are kept here for posterity. So, whenever you were hovering over a character select, it would play a small little animation of them, since each character had their own unique abilities and advantages and disadvantages. Oh, that's it. Here we are. The Art Showdown. This piece would be used as the primary box art of Outlaws, showing a standoff in an empty street. Behind a silhouetted Marshall James Anderson, the sun sets with a lens flare effect added. Yep. Bloody Mary brandishing pistols. The graphic used on the Outlaws conference room sign. Included on this sign is an illustration of Bloody Mary dual wielding pistols and smoking a cigar. The signature of Charlie Ramos, an animator at LucasArts and designer on the game, can be seen on the lower right. Cutscene and character source scans. Scans of artwork, renders, and screenshots used in the process of creating the cutscenes, as well as character concepts. The Anderson family portrait. A family portrait of John, Anna, and Sarah Anderson. This artwork would be used as a background element in the opening cutscene, seen hanging on the wall in the Andersons' home. It says John, but it should be James, since that's his actual name. Unless early in development, Anderson's first name was John instead of James. Marshall James Anderson. A tentative line work of James Anderson in profile, clothes flapping in the breeze. His face is shaped notably differently compared to later iterations. Yep. The figure drawing used a similar pose to the prior artwork. The proportions of this illustration hew closer to those expected of the game's final style. Clean pencil line work of the character art of James. He stands at ease, pistol in holster, and rifle slung on his back. There he is, Mr. Abraham Lincoln if he was a cowboy. As the line work, but now with shading added, a digital a digitized and colorized version of this would be included on a press disc for Outlaws. It's really nice and well made. Of course, I do have artist friends myself, and I bet they can do something like this if they wanted to. Shaded pen character art of Anderson, holding his revolver in his left hand. The signature of Charlie Ramos can be seen. You're going to be seeing that a lot, his signature. Charlie must have been the lead artist of the game when it came to concepts. A still from an unused cutscene of James furiously riding his horse. This is one of two images that was included on the LucasArts website in an art gallery as part of a 2002 celebration of 20 years of LucasArts. This drawing would form the basis for a graphic used in the manual. I don't remember this. I mean, I had the manual, but I have no memory of seeing this. And finally, a portrait of him smoking a cigar. This drawing would form a basis used in the manual. The Marshal really loves his cigars. Sarah. Sarah clutching Bonnie, her rag doll. A different design Bonnie had at the time. Sarah pouting while leaning into her balled up hands. Probably was meant while she was being held captured by Bob. James's father. Sparingly shaded pencil line work of James Anderson's father. This artwork can be seen in the opening cutscene when James Anderson opens up his trunk to retrieve his pistol. You can also see it in the trophy menu. When you look at the two, father and son resemble quite greatly, although James lacks his father's mustache. But he got a nice beard to go with it. Matt, Dr. Death, Jackson. An early portrait of Dr. Death, with only the head complete. At this stage, the character's design is wholly different from the final, appearance closer to what Slim would end up looking like than Dr. Death. Well, it was early conception. A heavily darkly shaded artwork of Dr. Death. This illustration sees Dr. Death fully realize, looking as we see him in the final and holding a revolver in his right hand. Yep, that's the doctor we all know and love. Another heavily shaded artwork of Dr. Death. This portrait shows Death staring at the viewer with a menacing grin. Dr. Death with his right foot in the air, legs caught around what three lines that would eventually become ropes. While this frame is not used in any cutscene, the scenario portrayed here and positioning of the ropes indicated this would have been used for the mine ending cutscene. Yeah, probably as he was running and we see his feet get tangled in the ropes, but he's like, I can't do anything about it, and just keeps running until he trips over the shaft. Dr. Death looking down thoughtfully on a corpse that appears to have been left out in the sun while stood in front of a small house. Probably just a little sketch, humorous sketch concept to get the idea of Dr. Death's character. Mr. Graham. A rough figure sketch of Bob Graham. A digitized and colorized version would be on the press disc. Bob Graham leaning forward over a desk, right hand clenched in a fist and left hand pointing forward and down, glaring towards an unseen character. While this is likely an early concept of the cutscene where Graham is talking to Death and Mary, none of the elements seen here match anything in the final cutscene. Only the rough framing is kept. A similar angle is used when Graham is kicking his legs up on the desk. Death, Bob, and Prisoner. Bob Graham stands with his back turned to the camera, while Dr. Death looking towards him as he holds a scalpel in his right hand and the neck of a bound and gagged man in his left. Again, this concept was either this concept was most likely meant to have been just an idea to get the power dynamic between the two, how Bob is the boss in charge and how Dr. Death is the eager outlaw for hire and is willing to torture and do dirty work for Graham. Heath Two Feathers, as he would be seen in the final game with his pistol hoisted and his hair trailing behind him. The signature of Charlie Ramos is there, and this would be used in the press disc. Shaded portrait of Two Feathers in ink. A heavily shaded drawing of Two Feathers, teeth gritted and brandishing a knife. Slim Sam Fulton. Early artwork of Slim before he acquired a dramatic redesign. Some elements, like the rifle and clothing, would be kept largely similar between iterations. This drawing would form the basis of a graphic in the manual. And of course, a digitized and colorized version is in the press disc, though it would use his final design. A relaxed Slim, leaning backwards with his legs crossed, rifle lazily held in his right hand, and left arm propped up on an unseen object. This artwork matches the final iteration of him, now sporting the same hair and closed eyes. Jack Sanchez. Caricature of Jack Sanchez. Certain elements exaggerated. In addition to the primary central pose, a smaller illustration can be seen of him puckering his lips, as if for a kiss, tying into the mockery Sanchez engages in. This illustration would be the basis for the graphic used in the manual. And of course, digitized colorized version in the press disc, though not exaggerated. Yep, that's indeed a exaggerated caricature of a stereotypical Benito. Dynamite Dick Clifton. Clifton, as he would be seen in the final game, seen here smoking a cigar and with a lit stick of dynamite. Charlie Ramos, and of course a digitized, colorized version in the press disc. Again, though, he's not in the campaign, just in martial training. Rattlesnake Dick Farmer. A somewhat roughly shaded illustration of what would become Dick Farmer, though the text indicates at one time it was intended to be George Bowers. A portrait can be seen upside down on the page underneath. A digitized, colorized version is on the press disc. Yep, there it is right there. Henry Bowers. Of course, again, this was a different conception of it. Here we are. Henry George Bowers. A lightly shaded illustration of Bowers, foot propped up against a barrel and aiming down his weapon. Faint outlines of similar poses can be seen around him. A rudimentary figure sketch. In this piece, Bowers stands with one leg slightly bent, his left hand on his hip, and his gun pointed towards him. Hubby Russell Sims. A lightly shaded pen illustration of Sims standing in a neutral pose. Charlie's signature, and of course, this is on the press disc. Buckshot Bill Morgan. Once again, same as before, a shaded illustration of Bill, Charlie's signature, and that this is digitized and colorized on the press disc. Cutscene frames. Anna's head. The arrow from 33 to 38 indicates this drawing will be used as a basis for frames 33 up to 38. Specifically for scene, I'm not going to read that. Dr. Death is in the foreground with gritted teeth. What will be Slim is to the right on horseback, further back. A general outline of the background is illustrated. Frame 27 from the cutscene of Carl, cheerfully gesturing towards an off screen James Anderson. Sarah struggling in Slim's arms. The names indicate that this is frame 34 of the cutscene. Slim's hideout, the ending. Slim, having just dropped his weapon and having just started sliding down the wall he has slammed backwards into. This was for frame 36. Train beginning. James, crouched, opening the rear door of the train as he readies his revolver. It indicates this being frame 34 of the cutscene, though it's frame 36, though, in the actual animation file. Oh, 65, I mean. The river basin. James looking to the left after being awoken by gunshots. His clothing has yet to be drawn. This is for frame 12, but it's frame 22 in the actual cutscene. James looking to the right after being awoken and now having his revolver. Again for frame 22, but it's for frame 38 in the actual scene. Flivs. Chief Two Feathers squatting and placing his hands together to make a bird call, to sound the alert to the others. Bob Graham's ranch. James waking up after having been knocked out and captured by Graham's goons. The ending. The basis for Graham's initial pose during the final cutscene, compared to the cutscene as seen in-game here, is his left hand is holding the left lapel of his suit, where in the cutscene itself, it's at his side. Preliminary line art of the third frame of him being shot. Refined line art of the third frame of being shot. The frame number is indicated here. Blue lines providing detail and outlining, while graphite pencil is used in part for rougher gestural drawing. The fourth frame of having been shot. Preliminary line art of what would become the 12th frame of Graham being shot. By this stage, he is starting to motion to clutch his chest before falling forward. A shaded sketch of Bob aiming at the camera. A rectangle is drawn showing the framing of the shot that will be used in this scene. Graham, having just been mortally wounded, immediately prior to collapsing. As with Bob aiming at the camera, this drawing has lines to help frame the shot. Storyboards. Alternate storyboards for the introductory cutscene showing 4 scenes that would ultimately not make their way into the final cutscene. An exterior shot, a man waving to James, James charging forward towards his burning ranch, and approaching Anna, who is lying on the floor in front of the ranch. I would assume with this one, the man waving towards him is actually Carl, the shopkeeper, who's greeting James and telling him to come on in. And then, of course, we got these two of him rushing towards his ranch and hurrying over to Anna. Flashback and the iron mine ending. Oh, it's the iron mine, not the silver mine. Storyboards for the flashback and mine ending cutscenes. The flashback storyboards show James's father's murder, as well as a young James attempting to work up the will to shoot his murderer. The mine ending cutscene shows James looming over the mine shaft Dr. Death ends up trapped in, as well as the cigar that would burn the rope and send him tumbling to his death. This is one of the 2 images that was included on LucasArts' website in an art gallery as part of a 2002 celebration of 20 years of LucasArts. singular storyboard of Dr. Death dangling from a rope as seen from above. A shaded sketch of an early iteration of the first shot of the opening, a train with workers either side of it below mesa plateaus. The final iteration of the shot would see the train straight on without any view of the rear carriage, with the workers using pickaxes in front of the train. Another sketch of the first shot of the opening, this time with a grid overlaid, 13.3 is multiplied by 1.5 on the right. The same shot but from further away. Less detail is given, though the overall geography of the shot can be seen more clearly. Scenery from the first shot to the left of the train. A facade of the left of the train can be seen on the right-hand side of the sketch. Some elements would remain in the final cut scene, such as carts and horses with riders on. Geological features here match those seen in the final cut scene. As the prior sketch, but this time for the scenery on the right of the train. The tall features that stretch out of the paper are completed on a separate page. Page completes the prior sketch, containing the tops of the features that the bottom of can be seen in the prior image. Background of the second shot of the game, where the two men are seen initially pulling out the money and map they intend to exchange. A pencil sketch for the background used for the close-up where the map and money change hands. Clouds and hills that aren't present in the final background can be seen here. Inked line work of the prior image. By this stage, the clouds and hills have been removed, though. This artwork shows an early rendition of what would become the Andersons' ranch. Contrasted with the final vista, this view opts for more of a straight-on perspective. In addition, the swing set under the long branch of the tree at the front of the ranch is missing. The barn is seen to the right of that tree, not present in the final rendition of the ranch from this angle. The landscape is flatter overall, with more greenery directly behind the buildings than is seen in the final. Still, it's a nice ranch to live on, I guess. The final view of the Andersons' ranch, rendered in pencil. A faint blue cuboid with an arrow on it can be seen starting near the left of the drawing. This indicates the panning and zooming out that takes place as Anderson rides out from the ranch. The pan and the zoom moving the focus to Dr. Death and Slim. The inked and detailed version of the prior illustration. Most additional detail is seen on the ground where Death and Slim will be placed in the cutscene. The view from the porch looking outwards across the ranch. The barn from the early establishing shot of the ranch can still be seen in this iteration. This inked variant of the prior artwork sees a great deal of detail added to the bark of the tree, in addition to shading on the barn. A sketch of the view of the porch and entryway of the ranch's house. A pot on a table can be seen in the background, the view of which is obstructed in the final cutscene by Anna. Wood that house is built of has natural grain and knots to it, giving it a more natural and rugged appearance. Additionally, more definition has been given to the insides of the house, structural elements now being easier to discern from the wall. A view of the house with a tree in the foreground, from which Sarah will be seen swinging on a swing attached to an off-screen branch in the final cutscene. Better attention is given primarily to the bark of the tree in this inked variant, along with the leaves. A view straight down, from which Sarah will enter the frame from the bottom on the swing repeatedly. Greater definition is again given to the bark. In addition, shadows are added behind rocks to give emphasis to the now setting sun. Looking outwards from the ranch, Sarah will come in from the left of the screen, skidding to a halt before disembarking and running off to the right. Death and Slim will approach from the background, the setting sun seen behind them. A faint circle can be seen, possibly indicating initial position of the sun. This inked variant is largely similar to the penciled one, though the faint circle in the background is no longer present. Additional rocks, foliage, and terrain definition have been added around the entrance. A close-up of the window which Sarah, holding Bonnie, watches Death and Slim, visible in the window's reflection, approach the door to the house. As before, but with more detail. Print out of the same scene with the background scene and the reflection of the window now included. Prior scan, but with Death and Slim and their horses now added in pen. Death is approaching with a large 3D arrow in front of him, indicating intended movement. This variant of the scan has Death and Slim both dismounted, the characters now much closer to the entrance of the house. The angle of which Slim can be staring past the camera in close up, with Death and Anna conversing at the entrance to the ranch. The door is already cracked open. No significant changes in line work shading were made for this variant. The view from which Anna sees Death as she holds the door, Death in close up, the fence and entrance to the ranch seen in the final cutscene are not present in this illustration. The alternative view of this exchange, Anna will be seen holding on to the door and looking left to an off-screen Death. The initial shot of the inside of Carl's shop, as seen from above. Largely unchanged from the pencil version, this adds more detailed shading on the floor and barrels. It also adds streaks to create the impression of a partially reflective surface. The view that James would be seen in for most of the scene in Carl's. Various items adorn the wall to the right, with a lone pillar behind where James will be stood. Picture frames sit on the wall, a picture of the family, art of Home Sweet Home, and a picture of Sarah yet to be added. An iron sits on the stove that will be replaced with a kettle for the final version. The shading behind the stove has been removed, though the iron has been replaced with a kettle. The faint outline of the iron can still be seen underneath it, though. The angle used as Carl talks to James. This variant remains relatively unchanged, besides detailed shading. A close-up of the angle used for Carl as he talks to Anderson. An unused shot of the front of the house with an empty doorway. Who knows what it was used for? Probably when Death and Slim were leaving the place with Sarah in tow. Though the majority of this variant had been done ink and detailed, an added door is present in pencil, which is yet to be detailed or shaded. The scene where Slim is seen restraining while Sarah struggles. It has the same of that of the unused background. The top half of the two pieces of background used at Anderson's crest the hill towards the ranch on horseback. The bottom half of the two pieces of background used as he comes up towards the hill. The background component of the three pieces that make up his approach to the burning ranch. No fire is presented in this drawing. The storyboard style presentation. The top half of the drawing shows the hill from the camera angle as will be seen in the final cutscene. The bottom half shows the scene in profile, with cameras indicating the start and end point of the camera in the shot. So yeah, another storyboard styled artwork. James sits on horseback atop the hill, his family home burning before him. An unused shot of the camera looking down, the porch at the bottom right, and the tree in the top left. The makeshift grave Anderson has made for Anna by the burned wreckage of the house. The wooden cross present is on a separate piece of paper, placed above the rest of the illustration. An earlier cross can be seen faintly underneath. The floor on which James's trunk will be placed, from which he will take his revolver. The actual contents of the trunk placed on the floor. The photo of James's father is presently only an outline, and the pistol, which will be a 3D rendered element in the final cutscene, is absent. Seen in the introduction's alternate storyboard, this shot is unused in the final cutscene. I would assume it would just be a reflection, either a reflection of Anderson riding off or just him making his final preparations before taking off. Right. There's not too many of these left. Well, it looks like there's a lot of them left, but we will see. An early rendition of the opening shot of the cutscene preceding the first level in the game. A rough outline of Bonnie the ragdoll can be seen on the ground at the bottom. Yep, right there. The final layout that will be used for the background is now established here. The outline is gone, and the sky and behind the town have been completely cleared. While nearly identical to the pencil version of this background, small amounts of detail have been added to the buildings in the background, along with the removal of anything to the right of the rightmost building. The initial shot of the cutscene that takes place immediately after the finishing blow is dealt to Slim. He's flung violently backwards against the wall before sliding down and propping himself up on a crate on the right side. Unchanged from the pencil version, but with some small details. A Dutch angle showing the entrance to the room, set up such that James is tall and imposing in the frame. As with the prior shot, it remains unchanged, just with additional details. The entrance to Sanctuary, closely matching it as seen in the final cutscene. The town name is not on the sign just yet. While similar to before, the name of the town has been called Heavenly Springs instead of Sanctuary. Well, there's an interesting detail. Heavenly Springs could have been a better name than Sanctuary. The train station where Sarah is taken into before Anderson is chasing after it. The background into which the train will be seen speeding into the distance. The tracks, being 3D rendered graphics, are not in this illustration. Nestled amidst the canyons, the campsite in which he rests, this drawing is particularly tall, the camera starting near the top and panning down. Yep, scrolling down, down, down. And that's his little campsite there, or at least where his fire will be. Same thing, just shaded in details. An early iteration of the initial shot of the ending cutscene of the sawmill. A blue rectangle outlines for what will be the actual framing. The basis for the actual background used in the initial shot, informed by the framing given in the prior image. More details have been added, with shading in key locations and wood grain near the rear wall and ceiling. The final resting position of the area containing the broken guard rails, Henry having fallen through them. The initial line work of the view as Henry bobs up and down atop a log into the camera from a lower angle and without boxes. Grammatically more detailed has been added to the majority of the wood that constitutes every surface in the shot. The angle from which Henry initially crashes onto the log carrying him into the saw. The log's position is included. No changes have been made besides the log being removed. The further away shot of him floating towards the saw. In the final shot, the saw will be visible on the left side. As with the prior sketch, the log is visible from the distance. Minimal changes have been made beyond the removal of the log. The wooden floor from which James will pick up Henry's pipe. The final shot of the cutscene where he'll turn his back to the camera and walk off to the right and exit the building. Fort. Unused variants of grave markers, without and discernible text of designs on them. Yeah, can't read the text, just different designs of these grave markers and the fence. Line work of the actual fort itself that the level takes play in, as well as the striking scenery behind it. The first shot of the inside of Bob Graham's mansion, on which a man will slam it into the ground after being enlightened by him. A high angle of the office. The only furniture present is the bookshelves. Prior to the mines, this shot will have Graham walking back to his desk and dusting himself off. Dr. Death sitting in a chair and Mary standing beside him. This angle is used again in the cutscene after Graham's ranch, where Sarah will be running into James's arms. Same angle as before, only with the general geometry seen on the walls and floor. Supplementing this is the foreground furniture, such as outlines of chairs and desk and lights. Behind Bob's desk. These are obscured in the final cutscene. The rear of Bob's office seen behind him as he sits behind his desk. Beyond cleaner line work and more detail on the wallpaper, minimal changes have been made. The window and bookshelf seen behind Death and Bloody Mary as they talk to Bob. This tall piece serves as the establishing shot of the mine, starting at the bottom and panning up. A faint outline of him on horseback can be seen at the bottom of the image, with his reflection cast in the water. We stroll on up, and there's the mine. The corridor that Death will flee down before tripping over the ropes. All the static elements are present here except for the rope. Minimum changes. The shot in which Death will be seen from below swinging on the rope tied around his leg. He'll come Anderson will come from behind the shaft to speak to him. Same thing, minimum changes to shade. The shot from which Dr. Death will be seen from above when you're looking down a seemingly endless shaft. Perspective lines that were included in the pencil variant of this illustration have been removed, there now being a blank space where the shaft will just be in darkness. The full shot used for James looming over Death. In the scene, the shot is zoomed in, missing out on the sides and the top of the illustration. Similar to before, though a separate piece of paper with new orientation of a lamp has been placed over the initial drawing. The shot used as James initially walks away and leaves Death hanging, before gritting his teeth and turning around. Oh, whoops. Whoops. Whoopsie. As with the other shaft, the perspective lines have been removed from this inked variant, replaced with a blank space in which darkness will present. The rocks and wooden support seen behind the pulley where Anderson will place his lit cigar before walking away and leaving Death to fall to his death. Point in the cliffs from which Two Feathers will make his bird call. Minimum changes. The ground from which a young Anderson picks up his father's pistol and attempts to shoot the man aiming at his father. An alternate unused variant of the angle showing the pistol on the ground. Early line work version of Graham's mansion. The key features of the mansion are all in place, though at this stage there's relatively little detail. The surroundings are also not yet represented. A more refined pencil line work of the mansion. Details have been added in, such as the wooden paneling, the tiles on the roof, the brick on the chimney, a wall, tree, barn, and fence have been added in the background. The windows on the mansion through which James zooms in on Sarah. The detail through the windows, though, is not at this stage. The ridge on which James is positioned using his telescope and looking off to the left, while two of Graham's thugs will sneak up on him from the right. The view over the ridge that James is staked out on. In the cutscene, a shadow of the thugs moves on to his position. A vertical shot that will show James groaning and rousing from unconsciousness. Various items, largely pertaining to horses and wagons, adorn the shack here. The background for a profile shot of James waking up. A wagon wheel seen in the background. James's hat was not added yet into this shot. And now the ending, at long last. An early rough outline of the curtains and window seen behind Graham as he's initially struck by the pistol fire. Wallpaper, curtains, and window seen behind Graham after he rises up and sets his aim on him. The general geometry of the wallpaper pattern is present, but not without details. The wallpaper has floral patterns, and the lines in the pencil have detail to imply leaves on them. High angle of Bob's office. The only furniture is bookshelves. Same as before, though. Same as before. The same angle as before, but with the geometry. A close-up of the wall and wallpaper, unused in the game's actual ending cutscene. It was probably meant to show the shadows of Anderson and Sarah after they're done hugging. The initial shot were James and Sarah right away from Graham's ranch. The overall composition is largely the same, though individual elements are in different places in the final cutscene. Minimal changes are present from the pencil version of this shot. The final shot of the game, showing a path that would lead James and Sarah into the distance as the sun sets in the background, leaving behind a starry night sky. And here it is. Right. We're almost done. Newspaper clipping. A newspaper clipping featured in the Outlaws owner's manual, detailing the backstory of Anderson from his childhood up to his retirement. Marshall Anderson retires following shooting inquiry. And Anderson's decision to retire brought an abrupt end to what would have been an impressive career in law enforcement. Anderson inherited his interest in the law from his father, a sheriff in Tombstone, Arizona. His mother managed the Anderson homestead and operated what is now Sorensen's General Store following the death of her husband. His father was a strict man, demanding discipline from James and his sister Sarah, now a resident of Denver, Colorado, and instructing James in the use of firearms by age 8. When Marshall Anderson was 11, his father was killed on a hunting trip with James by an unknown outlaw, probably motivated by revenge. The young boy, miraculously spared on a whim of the ruthless killer, made his way back to town on his own through the wilderness to break the news to his mother. He has confided to his friends that this incident, combined with the subsequent fruitless year-long hunt for his father's killer, settled his mind as to his future career. James took over the job as town sheriff from Sheriff Dunham and was made a U.S. Marshal to help the capture of notorious Schaefer gang, who were carrying out a string of bank hits in the territory. Despite the recent disagreements over the shooting of Shifty Stemmel and Justin Cracker Graham, Anderson remains for many citizens in our town a local hero. Marshall Anderson has told this paper he plans to use his retirement to spend more time with his wife Anna and his daughter Sarah, both of whom are among our town's most beloved citizens. We wish the Marshal Godspeed and success in his new career as a gentleman farmer. He gives a nice, interesting backstory to his character and such. It does possibly give you a rough idea where the game takes place, since it mentions that his father was a sheriff in Tombstone, Arizona, which means that the game possibly takes place in Arizona. Wanted posters for the anonymous outlaws found in the game. These pairs of images, one with a mugshot and one with background on the character, were used in the manual. Starting with Dynamite Dick. Beware, dangerous, Dynamite Dick Clifton, or Richard Clifton, if you will. Gunfighter, safecracker, committed stage and train robberies by using dynamite to sabotage shipments of gold. Later worked with the Purcell gang as the safe man on bank jobs. Clifton has frequently been known to rig booby traps to foil pursuers, so use caution in apprehending. Mr. Graham. Wanted, dead or alive. Bob Graham. Notorious gunfighter, gambler, and fancy dresser. Poses as a respectable businessman, but a sneaky owl hoot who'll sell out his associates to one another if he thinks he can profit. Considers himself above the law because of his business and political influence, and has been known to use extortion and possibly murder to further his business plans. Although he frequently tries to keep his hands clean by working through henchmen, you don't want to rile him, or he'll go out of his way to put you on Boot Hill personally. Any lawman that hunts him down better be prepared to shoot fast and ask questions later. Slim Sam Felton. Wanted for murder. Slim Sam Felton. Tall, tall, lanky galoot with a boyish face. Lacks the intelligence to plan a job, but do not underestimate his ability to carry through dirty work. Rural background, behavior characterized by misguided idolization of dime novel desperados, a deadly shot, but emotionally unstable. Wanted, dead or alive. Matt, Dr. Death Jackson. A ruthless, cold blooded killer who kills without discrimination or remorse, works for the highest bidder, and loves his work. A quiet intellectual outlaw with a taste for classical and biblical quotation, who shows little or no emotion until he actually has a victim in his power. Under these circumstances, witnesses have reported maniacal laughter and an unnatural taste for slaughter, dresses in a white shirt which makes him look like a doctor. In a gunfight, he is a cool character, takes his time on his shots, and places them with deadly accuracy. Blood Eye Tim. 5,000 reward for Blood Eye Tim. Oh, whoops. Blood Eye Tim was once an officer in the Union Army, but his methods in battle proved so brutal and dishonorable that he was soon discharged. He still wears the uniform as a symbol of his belief in his own righteousness and justifies his depredations against innocent citizens since the war, with ravings about the injustices of the federal government. A good shot and a draw, and notorious for shooting his opponents in the eyes. Bitten Jack Sanchez. Reward for capture. A Mexican American outlaw who uses two pistols in a fight. One mean son of a sea cook who speaks very little English, but understands plenty. Generally easygoing, but known to become reckless and rambunctious when drunk. Even when drunk, Sanchez is usually the only person who will walk away from his gunfights. He is known to pick fights by spitting tobacco in his rival's face. Henry George Bowers. Wanted, a $5,000 reward for Henry George Bowers. A dark, quiet man who is famed for his ability to hit targets at great range with his rifle. He blames all lawmen, whom he considers to all be corrupt, for his brother's death, and kills lawmen whenever he gets a chance. Chief Two Feathers. Danger. Wanted for murder. A Navajo Indian leader, he and a handful of his warriors refused to surrender when his people were rounded up by the army and taken to a reservation. This once noble warrior has turned to stage and pony express robbery to buy weapons and ammunition for his gang of renegades. Armed and dangerous, Chubby Russell Sims. A stocky, burly man with a pot belly and a bushy black beard, who wears suspenders and a bowler hat. A farmer who came west during one of the gold rushes, turned into a small time con man, and eventually to all out robbery and murder. Buckshot Bill Morgan. Wanted for a reward. son of black slaves who escaped the South and moved north, served in black regiment in the Union Army, and after the Civil War sought quicker profits and more independence on the wrong side of the law. His eyesight is somewhat damaged from a Confederate Minié ball, so he has been known to favor the killing power of a sawed-off double-barrel shotgun to compensate for poor aim. Morgan is now in the employ of Bob Graham. Ah, it's interesting to see how Bill and Ted and Tim worked for the Union side before becoming villains, essentially. Rattlesnake Dick Farmer. Reward, dead or alive. Former rancher and lawman who abused his office by getting paid by ranchers to turn his head when questionable actions were taken, like cutting fence lines and killing sheep. He fled the Texas territory after he allowed some ranchers to kill some sheep belonging to a judge and started robbing banks and trains. Okay, yet another character who was a good man, seeing that he was once a lawman. And finally, a reward for Bloody Mary Nash, one-time bar girl and dancer at the Dirty Dog Saloon in Cartwright Gulch. Later in life, as she got older, she became partners in the bar with the notorious Tennessee Tabby Toasty and ran the local entertainment. During this time, she fell in love with Matt, Dr. Death Jackson, who stoically tolerated her affections but admired her gutsy nature. She left the saloon when Jackson killed her partner and fell in with Jackson's gangs and began participating in all the jobs. And lastly, the digitized, colorized artwork for the various characters found in the press disc. Anderson, Anna, Sarah, Mr. Graham, Dr. Death, Mary, Two Feathers, Blood Eye Tim, George Bowers, Dynamite Dick, Rattlesnake Farmer, Buckshot Bill Morgan, Chubby Russell Sims, Jack Sanchez, and Slim Sam Fulton. Oh, and that's it. That is all the stuff in the Vault of Outlaws. Boy, that took a while to go over the game's development and history and all of that in one video. But that is it. That will do for this episode of Outlaws, and that will do for the game itself. Well, I've pretty much done everything I want to do in the game and talked about everything I wanted to talk about. So now I'm going to be taking me a nice long break of recording. But I will do Marvel Rivals still, and I don't know exactly when I'll get back to business, but once I do, I got more games in mind to show off in the future. So, that is it, and I will see you guys later.